This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, victims speak, gripping evidence in the case of a teen convicted in stabbings at an HRM high school.
In their defense, Université St. Anne denies any liability in a sexual assault case on campus.
And advocating for a new monument to remember the dead in Lunenburg County.
A few peaks of sunshine, the temperatures really wound up in the upper 20s, but more stormy weather is on the way. I'll let you know what to expect coming up.
Good evening. There were dramatic accounts of last year's stabbing attack at a Bedford high school in a Halifax courtroom today.
The descriptions were given by the C.P. Allen school staff members who were wounded during the incident. The teen's identity is protected by the Youth Criminal Justice Act, and CBC is not naming the victims in this case.
As Gareth Hampshire tells us, both of the victims recalled how they thought they might die.
The school staff members who were victims of the knife attack told the court today how terrifying it was when it happened in March last year. One described being stabbed multiple times by a teenager who'd been called to the office. He said his diaphragm was slashed open and recalls dripping in blood. He says he was screaming for help and feared the worst as he was laying on the floor trying to kick away from the teen. I kept thinking, this can't be it. I'm actually going to die. He went on to say, blood was running out of me so fast I almost panicked. I thought I was going to die from bleeding out, so I told myself just to lie down and slow my breathing and my heartbeat. His wife held back tears as she spoke about arriving at the hospital and seeing her husband in that condition. She says the trauma has stayed with her. What I witnessed in that room, I will never forget. My husband laying there, covered in blood, from the top of his head and all over his body and his hands to the floor around us. The second staff member who was wounded told the court she was petrified watching the violence being inflicted on her colleague, but was soon dealing with injuries of her own when she was also stabbed as the teen ran past her. My artery was hit and my lung was punctured. I thought I was going to die. On that office floor. Blood was flowing in and out of me like a river. She said she's also still struggling and is trying to forget the screams of terror from her colleague. Both have since been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, and both also credit two other students who helped them at the time. The teen sat alongside his lawyers and mostly looked down as the statements were made. Sentencing submissions were also made at the hearing. Because of the severity of aggravated assault guilty pleas, the Crown suggesting an 18-month sentence, with 2/3 of that in custody. The defense says it would be more appropriate for the sentence to be served in the community. The judge is expected to hand down her decision next month. Gareth Hampshire, CBC News, Halifax.
Staying with news from the courts, a 77-year-old man from Cole Harbour accused of murdering his wife has been found fit to stand trial. Edmund, Oregon, appeared briefly in Dartmouth Provincial Court Tuesday. The court was told a psychiatric assessment ordered shortly after he was charged has found he did not suffer from a mental disorder that would exempt him from criminal responsibility. Previous CBC reports incorrectly named the victim. Her name was actually Judith Organ. Edmund, Oregon, is accused of killing his wife, who was found dead on June the 9th. He is scheduled for a bail hearing Friday.
Police are investigating shots fired in East Preston yesterday afternoon. Officers were called to a report of shots fired between two vehicles on Bell Street yesterday just before 1 o'clock. Both vehicles fled from the area, but there were no reports of injuries. Anyone with information or video surveillance of the incident is asked to contact police.
Halifax police were on the scene of an animal attack in Fairview earlier today. According to a news release, police say officers were called to Frederick Avenue just before 9 o'clock this morning. They said 3 large dogs were attacking a woman inside a home. Officers went into the house, and while trying to save the woman, the dogs began to attack an officer who shot at the dogs, killing all 3 of the animals. The woman had to be taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries.
Université Sainte-Anne is denying any liability in a sexual assault lawsuit that was filed back in May. A student alleged she was sexually assaulted on campus and that the school failed to protect her from physical and emotional harm. These allegations have not been proven in court. The CBC's Selena Alders has the latest.
In a notice of defense dated August 8th, Université Sainte-Anne argues that this lawsuit should be dismissed entirely. Marissa Williams is suing the small Francophone university for unspecified damages, but Sainte-Anne argues she should not be entitled to any. Williams alleges that she was sexually assaulted on campus in separate incidents back in 2021 by two fellow students. One of them was on the men's volleyball team, the other a residential assistant on campus. Her statement of claim argues that Sainte-Anne had a duty to protect her, especially since the two alleged assailants were what she and her lawyers call school ambassadors. But in its defense, Sainte-Anne says it never placed either of these men in leadership positions. The university even argues that Williams was in a consensual romantic relationship with one of them. Another complaint outlined in Williams' lawsuit was a lack of emotional and academic support from university officials. She says they mishandled her case when she reported it the first time. Sainte-Anne argues that the university took the complaint seriously and conducted its internal investigation in good faith. A spokesperson for the school declined an interview and told CBC that no one will comment on this case while it's before the courts. Selena Alders, CBC News, Halifax.
Lifeguards at Lawrencetown Beach had to make a rescue yesterday after a surfer got into trouble on the water. On Monday, the province urged people not to swim at provincial beaches along the Atlantic coast because of strong waves and rip currents from Hurricane Ernesto. The director of the Nova Scotia Lifeguard Service says people need to heed the warnings.
A lot of people don't know the power of the waves. We obviously talk about Peggy's Cove quite often where we have people end up in the water, but yeah, we stay on the beach. They're lifeguards to warn people. In fact, I just saw a lifeguard walking down doing just that. So yeah, we could be better at it to warn people, but you know, there has to be some self-responsibility as well.
And I talked to Paul Dion with the Nova Scotia Lifeguard Service about the dangerous surf conditions this time of year. That's our newsmaker just after 6:30.
Tina Simpkin is in for Ryan tonight with our first quick look at the weather forecast.
Yes, and certainly very foggy at Lawrencetown today.
It really was, especially along areas of the coast where the winds were more southerly today, and those southerly winds, anywhere they were hitting along the shore, the fog really held on well into the afternoon. And not only did the fog hold on in some areas, but so did the showers, and they were really intermittent throughout the day. And still seeing some showers across most of the province, and they are intermittent. We've got a line of some scattered showers that are moving out of Sheet Harbour now through the Canso Causeway, and as they're pushing their way into Cape Breton, they're really starting to fizzle out. It's not the case in New Brunswick. Some pretty impressive thunderstorms forming here, and they're putting a lot of rain in localized areas as these storms continue to progress. Now that the sun is starting to set, these thunderstorms, I should say, are going to quickly start to diminish. But until then, the next hour or two, those thunderstorms in New Brunswick are going to rumble, and we'll still keep at least a chance for some scattered showers to continue to develop. There could be an isolated thunderstorm, but I don't think it's going to be as aggressive as the thunderstorms that are forming across parts of New Brunswick. Our temperatures this afternoon, where we did see those peaks of sunshine from time to time, those temperatures really responded to the sun, getting up to around 27 degrees in Truro as well as Kentville. We had 25 in Caledonia. Cooler where the areas of fog stayed put throughout the better part of the day. So that included Lawrencetown, even Yarmouth at 19, 21 in Halifax. We saw 23 in Canso and 25 with sunshine in Sydney. Now the clouds are being put back into place, and overnight tonight those clouds will be back. A chance for showers. If not showers, it will be fog. And we do have very unsettled weather for the next couple of days, but slightly cooler, slightly drier air is on the way, and I'll have all the details coming up.
All right, thanks, Tina.
Thanks, Tina. Well, the Halifax International Airport Authority announced the launch of 3 new programs today to make the airport more accessible. The programs focus on people with hearing and seeing impairments, as well as people with non-visible disabilities. The Sunflower program supports travelers with non-visible disabilities and connects them with support staff. The ERA app provides visual assistance, while the hearing loops technology reduces background noise for those with hearing aids or cochlear implants.
Halifax Stanfield is thrilled to be launching 3 new programs and services for folks traveling at the airport that are perhaps looking for accessibility services. And by having these services and programs here, it'll help remove barriers to travel and ensure that everyone has an accessible, enjoyable experience when coming through the airport.
Bastone says the programs are not unique in Canada and have been used in other airports in Toronto, BC, and Alberta.
Meanwhile, travelers to airports across the country may experience delays tonight, including here in Halifax. The Canadian Border Services Agency says it's dealing with a partial systems outage that's affecting customs processing at airports across Canada. The CBSA has not said what caused the outage, but says it's working with its partners to fix the issue. Halifax Stanfield says people may experience delays in customs processing as CBSA is temporarily reverting to manual processing of people arriving at the airport.
This next story is a cautionary tale for anyone traveling across the Maritimes this summer. 2 people say they were scammed trying to rent a PEI cottage through Facebook. They paid the person more than $1,000, and they say others have been tricked as well. Now they want to warn others to be careful on social media. Connor Lamont reports.
I spoke with 2 people who posted in a Facebook cottage page looking for a place to spend time this summer with family. The same account reached out to both of them about a cottage in Bonshaw, but it was all a scam.
I was upset, angry, because, I guess as an islander, you tend to trust people big time.
Lifeguard says the person sent her a private Facebook message. They exchanged texts, calls, emails, and photos of the property.
She seemed legit. She provided me her business license. She provided me where she worked. I'm like, okay, well, somebody's not going to scam me if they're telling me where they work because they know I can find them.
Shortly after booking and paying, Lightfoot says she saw Facebook posts that led her to think maybe this person isn't legit. She reached out to them multiple times, but never got a response back. And Lightfoot isn't the only one.
I was devastated. I was crying. I couldn't believe that this woman did this to me. Like, honestly, I thought I did my homework. I thought, I checked her out as a legitimate person.
Bartley posted on Facebook after being scammed, and she says over 40 people responded to that message saying they had a similar negative experience with the same account.
I couldn't believe that she had did this to so many people. I was shocked when I went online to see all these people that were reaching out to me.
Bartley and Lightfoot did get their money back through their credit card companies, but they want other people to know what they went through. RCMP says fraud like this should always be reported.
If you've been a victim of fraud, there's more than likely there is a neighbor or somebody else in your community that is also being targeted with these same scams. And we want to be able to make these connections and also inform the larger PEI public about the scams to try and prevent any further victims.
The most common piece of advice from officials is to always stick with established businesses. The province says that any legitimate tourism business on the island has to have a license, and you can look those up on their website. Connor Lamont, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Another pro basketball franchise is coming to Halifax. The team will be called the Halifax Hoopers and will play in a league with dozens of U.S. teams in small markets. The CBC's Paul Palmeter has that story for us tonight.
It's a great day for the community. It's a great day for the province.
Jeff Kleik is a native of Halifax who spent his early childhood growing up in Uniacke Square. He's now spearheading a new franchise to play pro ball in his home city.
We want to go with local players. We want to win with local players. We want to win with like your cousins and your nephews and your grandsons and your neighbors, the kids that you've been seeing coming up every day. We want to win with those guys.
The Halifax Hoopers don't have any players signed or a place to play, but a new ownership group has a franchise that they say will be ready to begin a 24-game schedule starting March 1st. The Hoopers will be the 4th pro basketball franchise to play in Halifax. Back in the 1990s, the Halifax Windjammers were the first, and later they were followed up by the Halifax Rainmen and Halifax Hurricanes. They played in leagues that were poorly run, and fan interest dwindled off each time, making bills harder to pay. But the Hoopers have already decided they will not play at Scotiabank Centre and plan to find a smaller venue. The league president says not playing at big venues is critical.
The venues are expensive. Everybody charges $5,000 just to put the floor down and take it up. Then they got to get their costs and all those things, and you go, oh gosh, that's wonderful. Well, that means the cost factor for those teams were 3,000 to 4,000 fans, paid fans, to break even. Man, that's tough.
Magley has a long history with pro leagues that have come and gone. Now with the Basketball League, he says it's a good fit. The league will have close to 40 teams spread out over the U.S. Halifax and St. John are the only Canadian teams to date, but Magley says there will be others in the Maritimes.
The other league's model just didn't make sense for this level of community. Our best markets in North America are towns a fraction of this size, because we're a big deal in those markets.
Magley says Halifax will be placed in a division with St. John and several teams from other small cities in the U.S. Northeast to cut back on travel costs. Each team will play 12 home games in a 3-month regular season. Paul Palmeter, CBC News, Halifax.
2 women in Lunenburg County are advocating for a new monument to be placed at the Hillside Cemetery.
They want the names of the people buried there to be listed at the site, but so far they've had no luck with municipal officials. Cassidy Chisholm has more.
So we're going to go right in here, Betty.
Yes. The Hillside Cemetery in Dayspring can be easy to miss. It's tucked away at the edge of a municipal trail system in the Lunenburg County community, surrounded by a fence to keep it safe and clean. It's been there for more than a century. But Yvonne Rayfuse only learned of it during the COVID-19 pandemic. She saw 170 numbered granite stones in the ground while out for a walk, but no names.
I was really downhearted by that. I really felt like the people that were buried in the cemetery deserved to be honored with their names and not just their numbers.
The people buried there are former residents of the Lunenburg Municipal Home. The facility was established in the late 1800s as a so-called poor farm, an institution that housed individuals who couldn't support themselves, whether they were poor, disabled, or had a mental illness.
The people were just ordinary people who had problems. A lot of them had dementia. Of course, it wasn't called dementia at that time. It was called insanity. And that was very sad because they were not insane.
The cemetery is maintained by the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, and there is currently a small plaque and interpretive sign at the site. But further honoring the people buried at the cemetery has become a project for Rayfuse and Rodenizer. They spent hours conducting research at the South Shore Genealogical Society, analyzing death records to create a list of names. They found 207 people, and there could still be more. The pair presented their findings in January to the municipality, asking for a monument that lists the names and matches them with the numbered plots.
We did the research, we went all through the records, and we picked out all of the folks who were buried. And we made lists of them, and here we are today, and trying to see what we can do to give these people dignity and recognition.
A staff report to council in June instead suggested a different approach, a grave marker program through which nameplates can be bought by relatives of those buried. Rayfuse says that could be complicated. Some may not have living relatives to come forward, and some plots have multiple people buried in them, despite not being related.
We certainly weren't consulted on the change to what was going to come to council, which, we would have really liked to have been consulted, but we weren't.
While the mayor acknowledges their concerns, she says the municipality is working to develop the grave marker program this summer.
I believe it should be up to the families to decide whether or not those names are put there. If the families want the names there, then we would be more than happy to move forward with that. But the program will be put in place to have the markers that will individually mark the graves of those individuals.
Still, Rodenizer and Rayfuse say they'd like the municipality to reconsider.
We know that it's not going to happen in the near future, but hopefully when information is out there, people will find out about the cemetery and take an interest in coming up to see and take a look and maybe find their relatives here.
Cassidy Chisholm, CBC News, Dayspring.
Coming up, Israeli forces recover the bodies of 6 hostages held by Hamas. The discovery is adding new urgency to the push for a ceasefire deal.
And after Joe Biden bids farewell, Barack Obama takes center stage at the Democratic National Convention.
And Tina is back next with the full weather forecast. We'll see you after the break.
All right, Tina's here with our full weather forecast now and lots to talk about.
And a soupy day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Part of the hair. It really is. Just give up. Use all kinds of hairspray or ponytail. That would be a good thing to do.
That's what Tom does.
That's a good look for me.
It's a good look. I like it. I like it. I like it. I think we could do some work, Amy.
We could.
Yeah.
I need a lot of work.
So do I. Don't we all? Don't we all? Well, there are some scattered showers out there right now, and it is certainly some soupy kind of weather. We've seen lots of activity across the region, and we're seeing that now. Thankfully, we don't have the thunderstorms like we're seeing in New Brunswick. Boy, oh boy, these would not be fun to drive through. Lots of rain, lots of lightning, but we do have our fair share of scattered showers, and there is a cluster combing along the eastern shore, and that contains some scattered showers and even some thunderstorms earlier, but now that they're moving their way off towards the east, things are settling down. Since the sun is starting to set a little bit earlier now, the energy isn't as high, so these storms will be diminishing. But in the meantime, that active weather will continue across New Brunswick, and most of the storms that are forming now are putting down a whole lot of rain in localized areas. And we do have a boundary that's trying to work its way through the region, and as it does, it's trying to bring down some cooler yet drier air. But ahead of this system, that's where we saw the warmer temperatures. Now, I know along all the parts of the coast, like Westport, Yarmouth, Baccarat Point, even through Lawrencetown, we had lots of fog, and that prevented the temperatures from rising into the lower 20s. But where we did see the sunshine today, the temperatures really heated up. In Ganesh Beach, right now, still sitting at 29 degrees. It's 25 in Sydney, 26 in Truro with some peaks of sunshine going on here. 21 in Halifax, 19 in Lunenburg, and we have 24 degrees in Greenwood. So we have an area of low pressure that's overhead, and it formed along a trough that's trying to work its way through the region. It's a slow-moving system and really not moving anywhere anytime quick. So it's going to stay a little bit unstable and unsteady for the next couple of days. In the forecast, we have those scattered showers, maybe even an isolated thunderstorm. But good riddance to post-tropical Ernesto. It was still sustaining winds, though, pretty impressive, of 111 kilometers per hour. That keeps it in the tropical storm range, but we don't have to worry about this. It's continuing off towards the east. We'll still keep an eye on the tropics because it certainly feels that way right now with that humidity being as high as it is. Those dew point temperatures are sitting in the lower 20s to upper teens. So yes, it feels pretty thick out there. We'll keep the showers in the forecast overnight tonight. If the showers don't materialize, there will be some fog and drizzle setting up shop, especially along areas of the coast with those winds remaining southerly but fairly light into the overnight hours. So tomorrow morning, a few scattered showers, certainly not out of the question. And where the showers are not going on, there will be some low-level fog, maybe even some drizzle with those light southerly winds. Overnight lows should hover into the teens, the upper teens at that. So not much relief as far as getting cooler temperatures in here, but it is working its way into the region. We've got some cooler, drier air on the way. Northeasterly winds will start to set up shop, especially across parts of Cape Breton, but we'll still get more of a west to southwesterly wind across much of the mainland, and that will keep things a little bit unsteady and unstable, keeping those showers in the forecast. And then we have another area of low pressure that will develop over parts of New Brunswick as we head towards the end of the weekend. And basically what that means is that we'll keep those scattered showers in the forecast, not only for tonight, but for tomorrow as well, with daytime highs of around 24 degrees, a little bit cooler along areas of the coast with a light southerly wind. The chances for showers tomorrow are going to be highest in the morning, and then again in the afternoon. And even though we'll carry chances for showers as we go through the day on Thursday, the shower chances are going down, and that leads us right into the weekend where there'll be a slight cool setback with overnight lows dropping down into the mid-teens for overnight lows. But as we head towards the weekend, the temperatures are going to crank up once again, especially as we head towards the end of the weekend. And I think that's kind of beach weather heading in our direction.
Sounds like all the right words. Yeah, for sure. Okay, Tina, thanks so much.
Thanks, Tina. And up next, I'll talk with Paul Dion, director of the Nova Scotia Lifeguard Service, about the risks lifeguards face when swimmers ignore the warnings. That's our newsmaker.
Stay with us. You're watching CBC Nova Scotia News.
Hurricane season is upon us, and that means heavy surf in coastal communities in the province. While it may make for some great pictures, there are also safety concerns. I'm here with Paul Dion, director of the Nova Scotia Lifeguard Service. There were warnings yesterday at several beaches across the province, including right here in Lawrencetown. Don't go in the water, it's not safe. I understand you even had a rescue out here.
Yes, we had a rescue here yesterday, one of the surfers out on the point here. But across the province, we had surf up to 2 and 3 and even 4 meters, and we've urged people not to go in.
Are those warnings pretty common this time of year?
We occasionally get them. We get it 2 or 3 times a year each season, and as I said, we have to deal with rescues. It puts my staff on the beach in danger when we have to go in and rescue people. So stay out when it's big like this.
Now, there was also a rescue of several people up in Cape Breton. People had to be pulled out of the dangerous surf. Do you think people have enough awareness of the power of the sea, and should there be even more warnings?
Yeah, we had, I think there were tourists up in Cape Breton, I was advised. A lot of people don't know the power of the waves. We obviously talk about Peggy's Cove quite often, where we have people end up in the water, but yeah, we stay on the beach. There are lifeguards to warn people. In fact, I just saw a lifeguard walking down doing just that. So yeah, we could be better at it to warn people, but there has to be some self-responsibility as well.
So what are some of the mistakes that people make when they venture out in the water?
Well, the ones I always worry about the kids, right? People say, oh yeah, it's safe, the kids want to play, they see the white water, and they keep their eyes on their phones and not on their kids. So that's my main concern. Adults usually can make an assessment. Kids, unfortunately, can't do that.
So what's your advice to somebody if somehow they do end up in the water, end up in trouble? What can they do at that point?
Well, wave your arm. The lifeguards are still around and will still help you. But, we don't want to send our lifeguards in danger to make a rescue. But always check with the lifeguard before you go in. And we're flying a red flag today, which means no go. And on days where it's questionable, we'll fly yellow. And when it's safe, we'll fly green. So anyway, stay safe is our main emphasis here.
Of course, we have a lot of beaches, not all of them have lifeguards on them. Should that be a factor in deciding which beach you go to?
Certainly, you should always swim where there is a lifeguard. We have 12 to 13,000 kilometers of beach coastline in Nova Scotia, and there's going to be lots of people that enter the water. But when it's big like this, stay out.
And when do the lifeguards call it quit for the season?
The 25th, this Sunday. A lot of our staff are ending up back in school and leaving to go there. We reopen Lawrencetown here for Labor Day weekend, and the weekend after we have people that are coming from away to go to school, particularly in Halifax, and we like to give them an opportunity to come to the beach that's supervised. We do have a couple of beaches that we keep open, Lake Milo, in Yarmouth and Elsford Lake in Kings County, but most of them are closed this Sunday at 6 o'clock.
All right, so plan ahead and be safe.
Plan ahead and be safe.
All right, Paul, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Anytime.
Coming up, poisoned land and water. Cyanide leaking from a shut-down mine in the Yukon appears to be killing wildlife.
Welcome back. Turning to the latest on the Israel-Hamas war, the Israeli military said today that it has retrieved the bodies of 6 hostages from Gaza.
With talks set to resume this week, the discovery of the bodies brings increased urgency to reach a ceasefire deal. Sasha Petrusik is in Jerusalem with the latest.
Overnight, the Israeli military found 6 bodies of Israeli hostages in tunnels under the city of Khan Yunis in the south of Gaza. Now, these 6 men were kidnapped on October 7th from 2 kibbutzes near the border with Gaza and carried alive into Gaza. And sometime after that, they died. Now, it's not clear exactly when that happened or under what circumstances. There's been a suggestion here in the local media that they were abandoned in these tunnels by their captors, perhaps during an airstrike. But that part is not clear. What is clear is that there is a lot more pressure on the Netanyahu government to come up with some sort of a deal that would release the remaining hostages, even though many of those may also not be alive anymore. There's also a lot of anger among the families of those who were found dead today.
We're caught between a rock and a hard place. You know, the Hamas and the Israeli government both contributing their part to the death of my uncle.
Of course, the fighting is continuing throughout Gaza, and we're hearing of an airstrike against a school in central Gaza, which was sheltering civilians. Israel says it was actually after Hamas fighters who were using these civilians as human shields in the school. Hamas has denied that it actually uses human shields. What we're hearing from the Gazan health authorities is that at least 10 people died there. While all this fighting is going on, there are talks continuing to try to end it. In Cairo today, Secretary of State Antony Blinken was sent from Washington to try to continue with a plan that the Americans are proposing to bridge some of the differences between Hamas and the Israeli government. We're not sure exactly what is in that proposal. It has not been released. The Americans are saying that everyone is very close. These talks are expected to continue in Cairo later this week. Hamas has said that it will not be attending, though there will be communication between them and the other mediators from Egypt and from Qatar. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Jerusalem.
It's day 2 of the Democratic Party's national convention in the U.S. The current Vice President, Kamala Harris, is all but guaranteed to be named as the party's choice as candidate for President of the United States. And last night was a symbolic and emotional passing of the torch by the current President, Joe Biden. Katie Simpson is at the convention in Chicago.
The United Center here in Chicago, it is home turf for former U.S. President Barack Obama, and he is the headline speaker at tonight's convention. He remains one of the most popular and influential members of his party, and he and his wife, Michelle Obama, will both make a case to voters and people here in this room for Kamala Harris.
I think the former President Obama is going to talk about that hope thing, right? The thing that really catapulted him into his historic election and served him well over the course of 2 terms.
Democrats have tried to frame this election and their opponent, Donald Trump, as an existential question for America, and they paint Donald Trump as an existential threat to the country. And that is going to be a theme for tonight's programming. Former Republicans, as well as former staffers for Donald Trump, they're going to be speaking about their own personal experiences as to why they agree with Democrats on that point. Kamala Harris will be skipping tonight's events in Chicago, which is not unusual. She'll actually be campaigning a couple of hours north in here in Milwaukee. There is a real sense of excitement, of energy and joy now that there has been this historic change to the Democratic ticket. There have also been major shows of respect for President Joe Biden.
I love the job, but I love my country more.
In an emotional and fiery speech, Joe Biden offered his full endorsement of Kamala Harris, marking a generational shift in power that the Democratic Party is experiencing and will hope will resonate beyond the walls of this convention center. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Chicago.
Canada's inflation rate fell to 2.5% in July, the lowest in more than 3 years. It's one of the economic indicators the Bank of Canada will take into account before its next interest rate decision on September 4th. Scott Peterson has the details.
Inflation is moving in the right direction. That's according to what officials at the Bank of Canada want, and probably most Canadians across the country as well, wanting prices to ease, to get more buying power. And this is a result of all those rate hikes that we saw from the Bank of Canada to slow the economy, to bring down prices. So that, in effect, is working. It would have come down even more if it had not been for gasoline prices up almost 2.5% just during the month of July alone. When you look at that peak, we were at 8.1%. That was decades high inflation back in June 2022. Last year, for comparison's sakes, we were at 3.3%, so prices going in the right direction. We're looking at individual items. Food prices cooling, 2.7% is the increase year over year, but travel tours actually coming down close to 3%. Passenger vehicles down almost 1.5%, and used vehicles down 5.7%. And that's an interesting metric because during the height of the pandemic, used vehicle prices were up close to 34% because of hard to get parts and a supply side disruptions. But going further, shelter prices up 5.7%. That's the smallest increase in 17 months. Good news there. But rent costs still up 8.5% year over year, and mortgage interest costs up a whopping 21% for anyone having to refinance their mortgages during this time. It is painful to do so. A lot of questions now as far as what the Bank of Canada is going to do at their next September 4th interest rate decision. Pretty much unanimously from economists, they believe that we are going to see a third rate reduction. So good news for a lot of mortgage holders out there and anyone with high debt levels. But the question economists now have is, might we see a couple more before the year end to prop up the economy from slumping too much? Scott Peterson, CBC News, Toronto.
There are calls to rescind the appointment of one of Canada's newest senators. Broadcaster Charles Adler, who spent decades hosting talk radio shows, is being criticized for on-air comments he made back in 1999. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs calls the remarks, quote, grossly offensive. Adler is a self-described conservative commentator and writer. He was named to represent Manitoba by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau just over the weekend. Manitoba Chiefs have complained that Adler has used terms such as uncivilized boneheads to describe Indigenous leaders. The choice is also drawing fire from inside Trudeau's cabinet. The Minister of Northern Affairs has issued a one-sentence statement saying there are many Manitobans better suited to represent the province in the Senate.
The Quebec government is putting a freeze on new temporary foreign workers who hold low-wage jobs in the Montreal area. Premier François Legault says the 6-month freeze will apply to new applications and renewals, but will exempt nurses, teachers, construction workers, food production employees, and those making at least $57,000 a year. Legault says the total number of temporary immigrants across Quebec doubled from 300,000 to 600,000 in 2 years, putting a strain on housing, social services, health, and education.
A large cyanide spill at the Victoria Gold Mine in the Yukon is being called an unmitigated disaster by many in the territory. They've been waiting for 2 months for plans to deal with toxins, and people in the area fear damage has already been done to the land and water. The mine is now in receivership, and the company's board has resigned. Julian Green has more.
Trekking toward his family's trapline along the Stewart River. Steve Bike is after moose, but he's worried about the Eagle Gold Mine, the site of a catastrophic cyanide spill.
Whatever I'm eating in that area, I'm definitely gonna have back of my mind.
If the water isn't clean, Bike says nothing is.
My heart is crying, I guess. It's crying for the land.
The heap leach facility was being run by Victoria Gold. When it failed in late June, an estimated 300 million liters of cyanide solution spilled. Now it's in the groundwater and in Haggard Creek. Nearly 100 fish have been found dead in the waterway. Concerns about contamination aren't limited to the mine site. Haggard Creek flows here to the South McQuestion River.
Oh, it's the lifeblood of this whole land here.
Sylvia Frisch's house overlooks that river valley. Her family lives here year-round, harvesting and selling birch syrup.
So here's where we've tapped the tree in the past.
Frisch's home is the first downstream from the mine.
My business is entirely dependent on a functioning ecosystem, and the river is a big part of that. I don't believe that they'll be able to clean it up, honestly.
Elder Jimmy Johnny is worried his way of life is threatened.
To destroy a land where when grandfather and I used to hunt, and it's very, very disturbing to me.
The Yukon's Minister of Mines says for now, local animals such as moose remain safe to eat. So are fish, except in Haggard Creek.
Like, this is a catastrophic failure. We will continue to hustle to protect the environment as much as possible from the contaminated water.
The Yukon government has appointed a receiver to restore the site and install wells to prevent more cyanide from leaching into the groundwater, water that will eventually empty into the Yukon River. And with the Chinook salmon population in that drainage already plummeting, this northern Shoshone chief says there should be a territory-wide ban on heap leaching.
People are unsatisfied in the Yukon with heap leaching. It should be banned because it's causing ecocide.
Stryker has committed to a formal investigation into what caused the leach pad to fail. All the while, people like Steve Bike wait, hoping for the day when they no longer need to fear using the land and all that it provides. Julian Green, CBC News, Whitehorse.
A very old, very cherished letter has made a very special journey to Canada. It was written during the First World War by a Canadian pilot who'd been captured by the Germans. He wrote it to his commanding officer, who kept it. Now the officer's grandson has brought the letter to Ottawa to show it to the pilot's daughter. Arthur White-Crummey has the story.
A famous British orchestra conductor arrives in Ottawa with a 107-year-old note in his backpack. It was addressed to his grandfather, and it came from the air.
In the First World War, there was a much more genteel custom whereby if an aircraft was shot down, the pilot, if he survived the shooting down, was allowed to write a note and send it across to his squadron commander.
In 1917, Royal Flying Corps pilot Duncan McTavish wrote such a note after German fighters shot down his plane in France. His observer was dead, he was wounded behind enemy lines, and now a prisoner. Before heading to a German POW camp, he penciled a few lines to his commander, E.L. Howard Williams.
The Germans then go across, fly across to the airfield, waggle the wings to show they're not going to attack the airfield, and the note is weighed down by a brick and it's dropped on the center of the airfield.
The story could have ended there until Howard Williams died.
My father was going through his effects and found one of these notes. And he thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if some of his family were still alive? Wouldn't they like to hear this story?
They were, not just the family, but Duncan McTavish himself, then living in Canada. Inglis Howard Williams' father headed to Winnipeg in 1976 to show him his note. Now, Inglis Howard Williams is in Ottawa to recreate that photo with McTavish's daughter.
I actually have the note here with me now. Dear Williams, just a line to let you know that we were brought down this morning. Poor Alan was killed and I was wounded in the right foot. Give my love to everyone. McTavish.
In a senior's residence across town, Barbara Welch, the pilot's daughter, waits with her family.
How do you do?
I've come 6,000 miles to see you. Have you ever seen the note?
Have you got it?
I have.
That's amazing. Think how old it is.
It's very difficult to read because he wrote it in pencil.
Okay.
This is the note your father wrote to my grandfather.
This has been pretty exciting and fun. It has. It's been fun. I wish he was alive. He'd been thrilled to know what went on and to meet Anthony and all the rest of it. He really would have. It would have made his day.
Arthur White-Crummey, CBC News, Ottawa.
Canada's main stock index moved lower today after the latest report on inflation showed price growth easing. while U.S. markets were mixed. Here's a look at how they did as we head to break. All right, temperatures up and down a little bit, but the weekend's still looking like it might be intact there.
Yeah, it's never too early to take a peek at that, right?
Never too early as far as I'm concerned, that's for sure. Well, we do have unsettled weather between now and then, but by the time we get to the weekend, it looks like things are going to start to settle out, so I think that's some good news. We do have some scattered showers out there, even some rumbles of big thunderstorms. That's going on across parts of New Brunswick, and all this action is actually moving off towards the east, so we're safe from those. However, we can't rule out an isolated thunderstorm this evening, but the chances are really going down now that the sun is starting to set. But keeping in those chances for scattered showers, not only for tonight, but for tomorrow morning as well. And when there's not showers, there will be some fog patches. But that's not to say that the sun won't try tomorrow. It definitely will. In fact, I do think there will be peaks of sunshine from time to time, and that's going to allow for our temperatures to warm back up into the mid, perhaps upper 20s for some. Then as we go through the day on Thursday, another area of low pressure that will be getting itself organized over New Brunswick and swaying hanging on through that will keep those scattered showers in and out of the forecast. So tomorrow looks pretty gray, but it's not going to be. It's going to start off that way with some fog patches, low-level clouds, even a few scattered showers. And showers could develop once again in the afternoon, but between those rounds of showers, there will be peaks of sunshine. And again, those temperatures should climb into the mid-20s for highs with more of a south to southwesterly wind going on throughout the day, but it will be light and variable as we go into the overnight hours. Now for the next 7 days, and that includes the weekend, it looks like it's going to be unsettled until then, but as we head into the weekend, I think things will settle out, but the humidity will be back. And the temperatures feeling very much like summer as we head through Saturday and on Sunday. So keep our fingers crossed for that one.
Still some August left, right?
Yeah, those aren't some bad-looking numbers, are they? All right, we'll take that. Thanks very much, Tina. Well, the London Zoo has begun its annual weigh-in for animals in its care.
So it's a day where we really get as much data as we can from our animals, and that database and that information is then shared with other zoos across the world, but it's also shared with conservationists, and they can use the data to help them when they're tracking animals in the wild.
Now, the process involves weighing about 400 animals individually, which is easier said than done.
I would think so.
The long list includes mammals, birds, and reptiles.
But it still leaves out most of the zoo's 14,000 residents. To be fair, most of the excluded population are tiny creatures like leaf-cutter ants. They weigh just a few milligrams, so it'll probably be hard to get on the scale.
There's some species you'd rather not have a hand in having to weigh, don't you think?
Exactly.
That might be one of them. All right, well, that's it for us tonight. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you next time.
Good night.